You ever notice how the moment you finally stop chasing, they suddenly remember you exist? It's almost predictable, like clockwork. The silence gets longer, the phone stays dry, the conversations die out, and you think, that's it, they're gone for good. But here's the part they don't tell you. That avoidant ex you think is done, they aren't done. They're hiding. Avoidants don't end relationships like normal people. They don't break up because they've thought it through, healed, and decided to move on with maturity. No. They disappear like a ghost in the night, because disappearing is easier than facing you, easier than facing themselves. And then they convince themselves you'll still be there. Like some emotional storage unit they can come back to whenever they feel lonely. Here's the psychological reality. Avoidants are addicted to space, but terrified of permanent loss. They'll create that distance to, breathe. But the second they realize the door they left half open is now slammed shut, that's when they panic. That's when they spiral. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Avoidants live in the exact opposite way, doing what's easiest in the moment, saying whatever keeps them from emotional accountability. But here's the kicker. When you cut contact, you aren't just removing your presence, you're removing their safety net. You become the one thing they didn't think you could ever be, gone, and that's why they come back. Not because they suddenly became secure, not because they've done the work, not because they woke up with a brand new personality. No. They come back because absence forces them to face a truth they've been avoiding. Life feels smaller without you, but let me be clear. This isn't about romanticizing their return. This is about understanding why it happens, so you stop being caught off guard. Because when you see the patterns, you stop making their reappearance into some magical sign that you were meant to be. No, my friend. Their return is not destiny. It's a reaction, a survival instinct. And I'll tell you something even more important. The second you understand this, you get your power back. Because this time, you'll know exactly what you're dealing with. You'll know the difference between real change and recycled comfort. Now, let's be real. Most people don't survive the no-contact phase without cracking. Most people check their stories. Most people send just one text. Most people stalk for signs. And that's why, honestly, most people never see the full transformation that no contact creates. But if you do it right, if you stay silent long enough, you don't just become unforgettable, you become untouchable. The avoidant starts to notice things they didn't before. The way you're not reacting, the way you're not checking in, the way you've gone from available to mysterious. And trust me, mystery is magnetic, because when someone's used to having a hold on you, nothing terrifies them more than losing that grip. Here's the truth. Every single avoidant comeback story I've studied, coached, and personally lived, they all had the same root cause. The person stopped being predictable. They stopped being there. They stopped being the comfort blanket. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the 7 core psychological reasons most avoidants come back after no contact. These are reasons based on attachment theory, behavioral psychology, and patterns that repeat in thousands of cases, whether it's been weeks, months, or even years. By the time you hit reason number 7, you won't just understand avoidance. You'll be able to predict their moves before they make them. And more importantly, you'll know how to hold your power when they do. But before we dive in, If you've been following our Avoidant X series, you already know we've gone deep into this territory. We've covered everything from the first 24 hours after you disappear to the exact moments they start to feel fear, regret, and longing. We've broken down volumes 1 through 7 so you have a roadmap to their behavior and to your own transformation. If you haven't watched those yet, you're leaving yourself in the dark, because these volumes connect like puzzle pieces. And if you're serious about understanding avoidance, not just for this ex, but for every relationship after, you need to binge them all. No skipping, no half-watching while scrolling your phone. This is about reclaiming your emotional leverage for life. So, do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, and lock in. Because I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll see exactly why their comeback isn't luck, fate, or romance. It's psychology. And here's the deal. Every single person watching right now is at a crossroads. Some of you will listen, take notes, apply this, and watch everything shift. Others will nod, agree, then go back to breaking no contact tomorrow. One path keeps you in the cycle. The other path makes you the one that got away. You decide which one you're on. So grab your notebook, clear your mind, and get ready, because what I'm about to show you will make you look at your avoidant ex in a way you've never looked at them before. If you're ready to make them come back and regret underestimating you, let's begin. Stay focused. Reason number 1. The shock of losing control. Avoidants thrive on one thing above all else: control. Control over how much they give. Control over how much they take. Control over when you get access to them. It's the invisible power dynamic they've been running since day one, and most people never see it. You think you're in a relationship, building something mutual, but in their mind, it's a constant push-pull game. They decide when to open up. They decide when to disappear. They decide how close you're allowed to get before they push you back. And here's where it gets even darker. Avoidants aren't just avoiding intimacy with you. They're avoiding intimacy with themselves. Your presence, your affection, your attention. It forces them to feel things they're not equipped to handle. And rather than deal with those feelings, they retreat. Not because you're unworthy, but because closeness feels like danger to them. So they vanish. They pull away, they test your tolerance for their absence, and 9 times out of 10, you chase. You try to fix it. You reassure. You prove your loyalty. Without even realizing it, you hand them all the power. You confirm their belief that they can create distance anytime, and you'll still be there when they decide to return. That's the cycle, and it works for them until you break it. When you go no contact, something unprecedented happens in their reality. For the first time, they're not the one pulling away. You are. And that's not just unsettling, that's destabilizing, because now the control flips. You've taken away their favorite game piece, the ability to dictate the pace. This is where psychology kicks in. When a person who's used to controlling the terms suddenly loses that control, their brain interprets it as a threat to survival. It's not logical. It's primal. Think of it like this. They were holding the steering wheel the whole time. Now you've snatched it out of their hands and stepped out of the car. The vehicle's still moving, but they can't steer it anymore. Avoidants expect you to react. They expect you to question what went wrong. They expect you to reach out, even if it's subtle. liking a post, watching a story, accidentally texting them. When you don't do any of that, it creates a vacuum they can't explain away. And here's the part most people don't realize. Avoidants are deeply insecure about their ability to hold someone's interest long term. They mask it with aloofness, detachment, and a "I'm fine on my own" vibe. But underneath, they have the same fear everyone else does. What if no one actually wants me for me? When you go silent and stay silent, that fear gets triggered. Your lack of pursuit forces them to ask the question they've been avoiding. If I'm so special, why aren't they chasing me? And that's where the spiral begins. This is the first domino that leads to their comeback. They start monitoring you. They notice you're not watching their stories anymore. They notice your energy's not circling back to them. They notice you're not feeding their ego with check-ins or "hope you're doing okay" messages. At first, they'll pretend it doesn't bother them. They might even double down on the performance, posting more, acting happier, trying to project that they're thriving. But here's the truth. It does bother them. Because you've done the one thing their attachment style never prepared them for. You stopped letting them dictate when and how the connection happens. The moment they realize you're not waiting anymore, the story changes. Suddenly, you're not predictable. Suddenly, you're not under their control. And in human psychology, unpredictability is magnetic. It demands attention. The Stoics used to say, if you wish to control another, first control yourself. That's exactly what no contact does. It shifts the control from their hands into yours, without you saying a word. Avoidants aren't used to earning access. They're used to receiving it by default. When you make them earn it, by not reacting, not breaking silence and not feeding the dynamic, they're forced to confront something they hate: uncertainty. And uncertainty is the breeding ground for obsession. This is why so many avoidants come back. Not because they've magically become secure, not because they've suddenly decided to cherish you forever, but because losing control over the dynamic hurts their ego more than losing the relationship itself. They need to know they can still reach you. They need to confirm that the old rules still apply. They need to prove to themselves that they didn't actually lose you, because admitting they lost you means admitting they never really had you in the first place. And so they reach out. Sometimes it's direct. "Hey, how have you been?" Sometimes it's indirect. A random like, a view on your story, a post that seems aimed at you. Whatever the form, it's a recon mission. They're checking if the door's still cracked open. But here's the golden rule you need to remember. Just because they come back doesn't mean they've changed. Control isn't something they give up easily. If you open that door too quickly, they'll slip right back into the driver's seat, and you'll be back at square one. The real power isn't in making them come back. It's in holding your ground after they do. No contact isn't about revenge. It's not about making them jealous. It's about showing yourself and them that you're not an object to be picked up and put down at their convenience. And when they feel that shift, that's when they start to panic. That's when they realize the game is over. And that's why, sooner or later, they come back. Reason number 2, the familiarity. Withdrawal avoidants are masters of convincing themselves they don't need anyone. They'll walk out of your life and tell themselves they're free. They'll post about fresh starts, peace, or finding themselves. They'll even start dating someone new, swearing this time it's different. But here's the truth they won't admit to anyone, not even themselves. Avoidants crave familiarity like oxygen. And when you've been a consistent, reliable, emotionally investing presence in their life, cutting that off isn't just losing you. It's losing the rhythm they've built their comfort around. You need to understand something crucial. Even if they acted like your connection didn't matter, their nervous system was still regulating around your presence. The way you texted, the way you listened, the way you made them feel seen without forcing them to be fully vulnerable. That pattern became part of their normal. And humans, even the most avoidant ones, are wired to cling to what feels normal, even if they think they've outgrown it. When you go no contact, you're not just withholding words. You're deleting the emotional background noise they've gotten used to. It's like pulling the plug on the hum of an appliance they didn't realize they noticed, until it's gone. At first, they might feel relief. That relief is real, but it's temporary. Because the same way a smoker feels lighter after quitting, then gets slammed with cravings, your avoidant ex will go through familiarity withdrawal. This is when the real itch starts. No new fling can replicate it. No distraction lasts forever. No amount of fake peace fills the same space. Why? Because you weren't just another face in their phone. You were a habit, and habits aren't easy to kill. This is where psychology meets biology. Neuroscience shows that our brains release dopamine not just from pleasure, but from anticipation of pleasure. That means the small, predictable ways you showed up, your voice, your encouragement, even your sarcasm, were little dopamine hits for them. Avoidants don't acknowledge that out loud because it would mean admitting you mattered. Instead, they frame it like they just miss talking or just want to check in. But deep down, what they're actually experiencing is dopamine withdrawal from losing their source of predictable connection. And the longer you stay gone, the more their brain starts to crave your version of familiarity, because it can't get it anywhere else. Now, here's the part they hate. They can try to replace you, but it never lands the same. They can find someone else who's attractive, funny, interesting, but that person doesn't know their little quirks yet. They don't know their subtle moods, their triggers, their tells, and that's work an avoidant doesn't want to do all over again. So what's easier? Sliding back into the familiarity they once had with you, reaching out to test if that door is still cracked open. And you know what's even more twisted? Half the time they won't come back because they suddenly realized you were the one. They come back because they miss the version of themselves they got to be around you. Think about it. Around you, they had inside jokes. They had someone who understood their sarcasm, their silences, their random obsessions. They got to feel seen without working too hard. That's not love. That's emotional convenience. And when they lose it, they feel that emptiness every single day, whether they admit it or not. Here's where no contact works its magic. You force them to sit in that emptiness. No comfort blanket, no just checking in. No little reminders that you're still orbiting their world. At first, they think they can tough it out. Then, the craving starts. And craving, my friend, is one of the most powerful motivators on earth. The familiarity withdrawal becomes unbearable. And sooner or later, they justify coming back with some excuse. I was just thinking about you. I saw something that reminded me of you. I just wanted to check you're okay. But make no mistake, it's not about the object they saw or the random thought they had. It's about the itch they can't scratch anywhere else. Here's the psychological hook you need to remember. Avoidants are often chasing novelty and clinging to the familiar at the same time. When they lose novelty, they run toward familiarity. When they lose familiarity, they chase novelty. It's a loop, and no contact breaks that loop in a way they can't self-soothe through distraction. When you stop being available, they feel that void, and their nervous system starts scanning for the thing that used to fill it. That thing is you. The mistake most people make here is thinking that their return means the avoidant has learned their lesson. Wrong. This is biology, not a breakthrough. They're not necessarily more secure. They're just more uncomfortable without the version of comfort you used to give them. That's why when they do come back, you have to handle it with discipline. If you drop everything to welcome them back with open arms, you're just reteaching them that they can disappear and still get the same version of you on demand. But if you stay grounded, keep your boundaries, and make them put in the work, that's when they start to realize the rules have changed. That's when they either step up or leave for good. Either way, you win. Familiarity withdrawal is one of the strongest drivers of avoidance breaking no contact. Not because they want to commit, but because they can't replace the way you fit into their world. And the longer you make them live without that fit, the more likely they are to test the waters and see if it's still there. They may not say it outright, but deep down they'll be thinking, it just doesn't feel the same without them. And that's why they come back. Reason number 3. The ego shock of seeing you move on. Avoidants will swear up and down that they don't care what you do after they leave. They'll act like you're a closed chapter, like they've detached, like your life is none of their concern. But here's the truth they'd rather choke on than say out loud. They expect you to stay in emotional limbo while they find themselves. They picture you quietly waiting in the background, not dating, not thriving, not glowing up, just there. Stuck in the same place they left you, emotionally on standby, in case they ever want to wander back. It's twisted, but that's how the avoidant ego works. They leave, but they still want ownership over the narrative of your life. Here's the psychological kicker. Avoidants rely on the assumption that you still care. It's the invisible safety net that lets them vanish without fully losing you. And as long as they believe you're in that state, replaying memories, stalking their socials, secretly hoping for a reunion, their sense of control stays intact. But the second that illusion cracks, the second they see evidence that you've moved on, leveled up, or, God forbid, are genuinely happier without them, that's when the ego shock hits. It's not just jealousy. It's not even just regret. It's identity crisis. See, in their mind, you moving on without them doesn't just mean you've found someone else. It means they're not as unforgettable as they thought. It means they've been replaced, and worse, replaced permanently. Avoidants are masters at avoiding emotional consequences, but nothing shoves reality in their face like watching you give your time, attention, and energy to someone who isn't them. This is where the mind games start. They might try to downplay it. Oh, I'm happy for you. Looks like you're doing well. Translation? I can't believe you actually replaced me. Or they'll suddenly start showing up online, liking your posts, commenting on old photos, or the classic, watching every single one of your stories without saying a word. Why? Because they're trying to reinsert themselves into your mental space before they get erased completely. And here's where you have to understand the psychology of ego wounds. When someone who thought they had a permanent hold on you realizes they don't, The brain reacts like it's under attack. It's the same fight or flight response triggered by physical danger. Except here, the danger is the loss of self-image. For an avoidant, your moving on threatens the very story they've told themselves, that they were special, that you'd never find better, that no one else could make you feel the way they did. When that story gets shattered, their ego scrambles to restore it. And the fastest way to do that is to come back and win you again, even temporarily. But let's be real. Most avoidants don't come back because they suddenly want to commit. They come back to reclaim their spot in your life long enough to prove they could still have you if they wanted. It's a game of emotional possession, not emotional partnership. That's why you'll see them come in hot. Nostalgic messages, sudden compliments. "I've been thinking about your texts," only to cool off once they feel they've regained the upper hand. And if you fall for it too quickly, you're not just giving them access. You're handing them their ego back on a silver platter. This is why no contact paired with visible self-growth is nuclear-level powerful. When you disappear and start upgrading your life, you create a double hit for them. They can't reach you directly. What they can see of you shows progress, glow-up energy, and emotional freedom. It's psychological torture for someone who expected you to crumble. Now, let's talk about what moving on looks like from their perspective. It's not just about dating someone new, although that can be a trigger. It's about the small signals that you're no longer living in the emotional past. You're posting happy, confident photos, not cryptic, sad quotes. You're spending time with people they've never met. You're doing things you never did with them: travel, hobbies, experiences. Every one of those signals chips away at their belief that you're still emotionally anchored to them. And here's the thing. Avoidants don't like change. They can't control. If you change without them, they can't rewrite the story to include themselves. That's where the fear kicks in, the fear of being forgotten. Fear of being forgotten is one of the most powerful human motivators, and when it's paired with the blow of seeing you genuinely thriving, it becomes almost unbearable for the avoidant ego. So they come back, not always with grand gestures, sometimes just with a breadcrumb, a message, a reaction, a random "hey stranger" out of nowhere. They're testing the waters, seeing if they can still influence your emotions. Because if they can, it soothes the wound. If they can't, that's when they spiral. Here's the part where you win. When you hold your ground after the ego shock, you don't just protect yourself. You shift the balance permanently. You stop being the person they left and start being the person they can't leave behind in their mind. Because no matter what they do next, they'll remember the moment they saw you moving on without them. And that memory? It will live rent-free in their head for years. That's why reason number 3 is so powerful. It's not just about making them jealous. It's about breaking the illusion that they had endless time to wander back whenever they felt like it. Once that illusion's gone, they don't see you as a backup plan anymore. They see you as the one who slipped away. And that image is impossible to shake. Reason number 4. The realization. They've lost the emotional high. Avoidants are adrenaline junkies. Not in the way thrill seekers jump off cliffs or race motorcycles, but in how they handle relationships. Their drug of choice: emotional control. When they first meet you, you give them a rush. You light them up. You make them feel seen, admired, wanted, but without demanding they bear their full soul. It's safe excitement. It's intimacy on their terms. But here's the problem. Once they start pulling away, they still expect that rush to be available whenever they feel like dipping back into it. They want to keep you warm while they cool off. They want to know that no matter how far they retreat, they can come back and get that emotional high from you. When you go no contact, you slam that door. No highs, no reassurance, no validation hit. And for someone whose entire emotional regulation system depends on controlling when they connect and when they detach, that's like cutting off their supply. This is where the real panic sets in. And it's not about love at this stage. It's about withdrawal. Think about it like this. They were used to sipping from your energy like a secret stash. They didn't have to earn it. They didn't have to be consistent to get it. They just had to show up when they felt like it. Now, it's gone. The stash is empty. And it's not because they finished it. It's because you locked the door to it entirely. That's when they start realizing something dangerous to their ego. They can't create that same feeling anywhere else. Sure, they might try. They'll go to someone new. They'll flirt with a distraction. They'll dive into work, hobbies, travel. Anything to simulate the emotional high you used to give them. But nothing hits the same. Why? Because your bond wasn't just about attraction. It was about emotional chemistry. That combination of your voice, your presence, your little quirks, your way of understanding them without them having to spell it out. It's rare. It's irreplaceable. And when they realize they can't replicate it, that's when the cravings start. Here's the psychological truth. The human brain is wired to seek out what's familiar when it's stressed or lonely. And when an avoidant is going through an emotional low, their mind automatically scans for the last place they got a reliable high. That last place, you. So now they're not just missing you as a person. They're missing the emotional hit they got from being in your presence. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you stay in no contact long enough, you actually rewire their brain. You create a scenario where the only way for them to get that high again is to come back to you and risk facing the intimacy they were once avoiding. That's the irony of no contact. It forces them to choose between staying in discomfort or confronting the thing they ran from in the first place. This is also why timing is so critical. If you break no contact too early, you feed the addiction before the withdrawal really kicks in. They get their fix, they calm down, and the cycle repeats. But if you hold out long enough, that's when you hit the tipping point where the craving becomes unbearable, and they have to reach out. Now, I told you in the intro that the first person to comment the secret mantra in this reason would get pinned. Here it is. Type this in the comments, word for word, and claim it like you mean it. I am the high they can't replace. Not because you're trying to be petty, not because you're clinging to the hope they'll come back, but because you're declaring something powerful to yourself. That you are the rare energy in their life. That your presence is premium. That your worth isn't negotiable. And if they want it, they'll have to show up at a level they've never shown up before. The moment you internalize that, something shifts. Because here's the truth. An avoidant comeback is inevitable when you've been their strongest source of emotional high. And you've taken it away. It might take weeks. It might take months. Sometimes even years. But human psychology doesn't change just because they want it to. You can't replace certain emotional bonds. And if you were truly one of a kind to them, their mind will circle back whether they like it or not. Here's the part that separates the strong from the weak. When they do come back, you'll feel the rush too. That little spark of validation. That hit of, I knew it. But if you cave to that feeling without seeing proof of change, you're not just letting them back in. You're giving them the keys to the same cycle you worked so hard to break. The real win? Being able to look at them, hear them out, and still keep your power. That's what no contact builds. Not just the possibility of them coming back, but the certainty that you don't need them to. Because when you truly embody the mantra, I am the high they can't replace, you stop chasing the fix they once gave you, and you start being the one they can't stop craving. Reason number 5. The panic of realizing you're no longer accessible. Avoidants survive on the belief that they can have you whenever they decide to. It's not something they say out loud. It's an unspoken rule they've built the whole dynamic on. They leave, you'll still be there. They get bored, you'll still answer. They go silent for weeks, you'll still reply in 5 minutes. That belief is what gives them permission to keep you at arm's length. Because in their mind, you're a constant. Something they can pick up and put down like a favorite book they haven't finished yet. But here's the thing about no contact. It destroys that illusion in silence. When you're not checking in, when you're not reacting, when you're not leaving little openings for them to slip back into, that's when it hits them. Oh, I can't just get to them whenever I want anymore. And that realization, it's not just unsettling, it's terrifying for the avoidant mind. You have to understand, avoidants are allergic to vulnerability. They see emotional closeness as dangerous, so they distance themselves to feel safe. But the only reason they can afford to distance themselves is because they believe the connection will still be there when they come back. When you remove that safety net, you're not just creating space, you're creating scarcity. And scarcity is powerful. It turns, I'll get to it later, into, I have to deal with this now. This is rooted in basic human psychology. We value what we think we might lose more than what we already have. As long as they believe you'll never fully walk away, you're low urgency. But the second they believe access to you is disappearing, your value skyrockets. Not because you've changed, but because the terms have changed. Think of it like a VIP club. If the door is always open, anyone can stroll in at any time. There's no rush. But the moment they see the rope go up, the bouncer guarding the entrance and the sign that says exclusive members only, suddenly everybody wants in. When you cut contact, you put the rope up. And for the first time, they realize they're not guaranteed a spot inside. This is when panic starts to creep in. They'll start small, subtle attempts to re-establish access without committing to anything real. A funny meme they think will make you respond. A random question only you would know the answer to. An innocent reaction to your story. If you respond, they log it mentally. Access restored. If you don't, that panic deepens. Here's where the avoidant paradox kicks in. The more they believe they can't have you, the more they want you. Not necessarily because they're ready to give you what you deserve, but because losing access means losing control. And avoidants are obsessed with control. And, make no mistake, they don't just want control over the relationship. They want control over how you feel about them. No contact strips that away. It makes them wonder, what if someone else has their attention now? What if I don't matter to them anymore? What if I've officially been replaced? Those questions aren't just uncomfortable. They're existential threats to the avoidant ego. Here's the beauty of this stage. By the time they start feeling the panic, it's not about you chasing them anymore. It's about them chasing access to you, and if you hold your ground, that power shift becomes permanent. Now, let's be clear. Panic isn't love. It's not commitment. It's not proof they've changed. Panic is a reaction to scarcity, and if you open the door too soon, that panic goes away, along with the urgency to actually do anything different this time. That's why the strongest position you can hold when they reach out is this: polite, but not overly warm. Calm, but not desperate. Engaged, but on your terms. This communicates that while you're not bitter or closed off, you're also not giving away VIP access just because they knocked. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Apply that here. Your value to them isn't in how many texts you send or how much time you give. It's in the fact that your attention has become rare. And rare things are expensive. This is why reason number 5 is so dangerous for avoidance. It flips the entire dynamic. Before, you were the one feeling anxious about losing them. Now, they're the one feeling anxious about losing you. And the deeper that panic goes, the more likely they are to reappear in ways that seem almost out of character. Late night, "I miss you" texts. Random, "Hey, remember this?" messages. Sudden compliments about things they ignored before. It's all driven by one thing: the fear that they've been permanently locked out. Your job when this happens isn't to gloat or punish them. It's to remember that access to you is a privilege. One they have to earn. Because the minute you treat it like a right instead of a privilege, the panic dies, the chase ends, and you're back in the same cycle you started in. In other words, let them feel the scarcity. Let them sweat. Let them realize that access to you is no longer guaranteed. Because once that truth sinks in, they won't just want you back. They'll need to prove they still can. Reason number 6. The curiosity spiral. They can't escape avoidance are control freaks disguised as chill people. They'll act like they don't care what you're doing, like your life doesn't cross their mind, like they've completely moved on. But that's just the performance. Underneath, they're wired the same way every human is. The less they know, the more they want to know. And nothing feeds that need for information more than mystery. When you were in contact, they had a window into your life. They knew when you were home, who you were with, what your mood was, even if it was just from your tone in a text. That information kept their anxiety low because it gave them control over the narrative. But when you go no contact, that window slams shut. No updates, no accidental clues in your messages, no story views confirming you're still orbiting their world. They're left with nothing but questions. And here's the thing about avoidance. They hate unanswered questions, especially when those questions threaten their ego. Questions like, who are they with right now? Are they dating someone else? Do they even think about me anymore? Have they completely replaced me? At first, they'll try to brush it off. They'll tell themselves they're too busy to care. They'll distract themselves with work, friends, or shallow flings. But the mind has a way of looping back to the thing it's trying to avoid. And the more they try not to think about you, the more they do. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. The tendency for people to remember and obsess over unfinished situations more than completed ones. And to the avoidant mind, your sudden disappearance is the ultimate unfinished business. When you walked away without begging for closure, without giving them a big emotional goodbye, without handing them an explanation they could control. You created an open loop in their brain, and open loops demand to be closed. That's why curiosity is such a dangerous motivator here. It doesn't just nudge them, it gnaws at them. It plays in the background while they're at work, while they're out with friends, even while they're with someone else. Because they're not just wondering about you, they're wondering what your silence means. Does it mean you've moved on? Does it mean you're angry? Does it mean you're over them? Or, the one that really burns, does it mean you never needed them in the first place? See, avoidants like to tell themselves a story after they leave someone. I pulled away because it wasn't right for me. They probably still think about me. If I ever want to go back, I can. That story keeps their ego intact. But when you disappear without playing your role in that script, you blow the ending apart. Suddenly, they're not sure if they're still the main character in your mind, or if you've recast the role completely. And for someone who built their identity on being hard to replace, that's unbearable. Here's the beautiful part. The less you give them, the more their curiosity grows. This is where the silent power of no contact works like gravity, pulling them toward you without you lifting a finger. They'll start watching your social media without interacting. They'll start asking mutual friends about you. They might even throw out a breadcrumb message just to see if you bite. It's not always because they're ready to come back. Sometimes it's just to gather intel. But here's the twist. Every time they break their silence to check on you, they're proving that your absence is affecting them. Think of it like this. You've gone from being an open book to a locked diary. They can't flip through your pages anymore, and now they're obsessed with what might be written inside. That's what makes curiosity such a potent trigger for an avoidant comeback. It's not about you chasing them. It's about them chasing answers. But here's where most people blow it. The second the avoidant reaches out, they spill everything. They over-explain what they've been doing. They unload their feelings. They give the avoidant exactly what they were looking for. All the mystery gone in one conversation. And the second you do that, the curiosity dies. Once the loop is closed, they feel safe again, and they retreat. The real power play? Let them stay curious. Even if you respond, keep it light. Keep it vague. Drop hints instead of full stories. Give them just enough to make them wonder even more. Because the more they wonder, the more they chase. And the more they chase, the deeper they get pulled back into your orbit. On your terms this time. Reason number 6 is one of the sneakiest but most reliable drivers of an avoidance return. Not because they've decided they can't live without you, but because the mystery you've created is now running their thoughts on a loop they can't shut off. And the longer they live in that loop, the more inevitable it becomes that they'll break silence just to see if you're still reachable. That's the moment you'll know. You've gone from being predictable to being unforgettable. Reason number 7. The regret they never saw. Coming. Avoidants pride themselves on being immune to regret. They'll tell themselves they're just doing what's best for them. They'll convince themselves they had no choice but to leave. And they'll wear that detachment like armor, pretending it protects them from ever looking back. But here's the truth they'll never post about, never say to their friends, never admit even in therapy. Regret doesn't hit avoidance when they leave you. It hits when they realize they can't get you back. At the moment they pull away, they're in self-protection mode. They're not thinking about the long-term cost of losing you. They're thinking about the short-term comfort of avoiding whatever intimacy was making them uncomfortable. To them, leaving feels like relief. But here's the thing about relief. It's temporary. Once the relief fades, reality starts to creep in. And reality sounds like this. I thought I'd feel better by now. I thought I'd be happier without them. Why do I feel emptier? That's the moment the first cracks appear. Avoidants are slow processors when it comes to loss. They can't just rip off the emotional bandage and deal with the wound. They spend weeks, months, sometimes years avoiding it. But no contact forces them to face it sooner. Why? Because silence removes the illusion of open access. They're not just missing you, they're being confronted with the fact that their decisions have permanent consequences. And that's when the regret hits like a freight train. See, regret for an avoidant isn't about missing the good times. It's about realizing they underestimated the role you played in their life. They start remembering things they overlooked. Your patience when they pulled away. Your ability to make them laugh when they were stressed. The way you saw through their walls without tearing them down. Those memories turn from background noise into a highlight reel they can't stop replaying. This is also where psychological contrast kicks in. They start comparing their life with you to their life without you. And here's the kicker. It's never an even comparison. With you, they had stability. They had someone who got them without needing constant explanation. They had a connection that, whether they admitted it or not, made them feel safer than they felt with anyone else. Without you, they have uncertainty. They have dating apps that feel shallow. They have people who don't know their history, their humor, or their quiet moments. And the more they compare, the heavier that regret becomes. Now, regret is tricky for avoidants because it threatens their self-image. To admit they regret losing you is to admit they made a mistake. And avoidants hate admitting mistakes. So instead of coming right out and saying, I wish I'd handled things differently, they'll disguise it. They might come back with, I was just thinking about you. You crossed my mind the other day. Remember when we... It's all code for, I miss what we had, and I'm trying to see if it's still there. Here's where you need to be brutally honest with yourself. Regret isn't a promise of change. Just because they regret losing you doesn't mean they're suddenly ready to give you the love, consistency, or commitment you deserve. In fact, sometimes their return after regret is just an attempt to soothe their own discomfort, to prove to themselves they could still have you if they wanted. That's why your role here isn't to rush to rebuild the relationship. It's to observe whether they're coming back out of loss or out of growth. Loss says, I miss you because I can't have you right now. Growth says, I miss you and I'm ready to show up differently so I never lose you again. The sad truth? Many avoidants never expect regret to catch up with them. They think their walls will keep it out forever. But no contact bypasses those walls because it's not about confrontation. It's about absence. And absence has a way of making the heart realize what the ego tried to bury. This is why reason number 7 is the final, most powerful driver of an avoidant comeback. By the time regret sets in, they've usually already tested all their escape routes. Distraction didn't work. Rebound didn't last. Ignoring their feelings, exhausting. They've run out of ways to pretend they're fine. And now the only thing left is to face the truth. They lost something they'll never find again in the same way. That's when you get the message. Not because they suddenly became secure overnight, but because they can't carry the weight of knowing they let you slip away without at least trying to pull you back. And that moment, whether you let them in or keep them out, will be the one they replay in their mind for years. Because for avoidance, the deepest regret isn't losing someone. It's realizing that person never needed them to come back. Final power play. When they return in this stage, your greatest advantage is to remain calm, grounded, and in control. Don't rush to ease their regret. Make them sit in it. Because if they really want to earn their way back into your life, they'll have to show you they can handle the intimacy they once ran from. And if they can't, you walk away knowing you didn't just survive losing them. You became the one they'll never stop remembering. Take back the power they thought you'd never claim, so there you have it. 7 psychological, unshakable, inevitable reasons most avoidants come back after no contact. And now you know. It was never about luck. It was never about fate. It was never about you manifesting them back into your life. It was psychology from the start. Here's the harsh reality. And I'm saying this because you need the truth, not fairy tales. The comeback isn't the win. Anyone can get an avoidant to come back. You could do it right now if you broke no contact, begged for closure, or fed their ego. But that's not power. That's performance. The real win? Holding your ground when they do come back. Making them realize that if they want you now, the old dynamic is dead. That the version of you who tolerated crumbs, who waited by the phone, who filled the silence with endless reassurance, doesn't exist anymore. Because here's what no one wants to admit. Avoidants don't magically become secure the second they knock on your door again. If you take them back without proof of change, they'll slip right into the same patterns. Push, pull, hot, cold, and you'll be back here 6 months from now, wondering why the cycle repeated. So let me be crystal clear. Your silence wasn't just about making them miss you. It was about making you remember what you're worth. You've now seen every trigger, the loss of control, the withdrawal from familiarity, the ego shock of seeing you move on, the craving for the emotional high, the panic over lost access, the curiosity spiral, and finally the regret they never saw coming. Every single one of those reasons has something in common. They all happen when you stop giving yourself away for free. That's the part they never saw coming. They thought no contact was a game you'd break first. They thought they'd have the upper hand forever. They thought you'd always be there just in case. But you weren't. And you're still not. This is why I tell you over and over, access to you is a privilege, not a right. When you start treating it that way, you stop being an option. You stop being a backup plan. You become the one that got away and the one they can't get out of their head. And even if they do come back, you're no longer the same person they left. You're sharper. You're stronger. You're more dangerous. Because you now know their patterns and you know your worth. Now, here's what I want you to do. Drop this in the comments right now. I hold the power now. Not for me, not for them, for you. Type it as a declaration that you're done playing the old role they wrote for you. That from here on out, you set the terms. That no matter what they do next, you decide if and how they get access to you. And if you're new here, you've just stepped into the Avoidant X Masterclass you didn't know you needed. This video is part of an entire 7-volume series where we've mapped out the avoidance cycle from start to finish. We've covered what happens in the first 24 hours after you disappear, the exact moment they start to feel fear, how they spiral when you start dating again, and the psychological triggers that turn no contact into a weapon they can't defend against. If you haven't binged the other volumes yet, you're walking into battle without the full armor. So do yourself a favor. When this video ends, hit my channel page, start from volume 1, and watch them in order. I guarantee you'll see your situation differently by the end. Because here's the thing, it's not enough to know that avoidants come back. You need to know why. And what to do when they do. You need to know how to turn their return from an ego boost into a power shift. And you need to know how to tell the difference between a comeback fueled by regret and one fueled by real change. That's the knowledge that keeps you from repeating this cycle for the next 10 years of your life. Now, I'm going to leave you with this. Most people go through breakups thinking the end goal is to get them back. They put all their energy into the comeback. But the real transformation, it's becoming the person who doesn't need them to come back, but is strong enough to handle it when they do. When you can look at them, hear them out, and still walk away if they haven't changed. That's when you've truly won. So here's your final call to action. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next drop in this series. And, most importantly, take 2 minutes after this video to drop your mantra in the comments. I hold the power now. Say it, mean it, and watch what happens when you start living it. Because when you do, you stop being just another person in their past. And you become the lesson they'll never forget.